My name is Shazin Remtula. I'm a member of the Economic Planning Board for Tanzania. Today we are privileged to have guest speaker, Mr. Shabir Abji, Executive Director of 4 Points Sheraton. Welcome, Shabir.
Thank you very much, Shazin.
Shabir will be talking to us about the impacts of COVID-19 on the Tanzanian economy, the hospitality industry, and businesses at large. The outbreak of COVID-19 has had an extraordinary impact on the global economy. Some estimates suggest that it will trim economic growth by 2% per month if current conditions persist. This has already started to affect the Tanzanian economy. Shabir is also involved in the IT sector, manufacturing of chemicals. He's a board of directors of several companies, including Jubilee Insurance, and part of the governing council of the Confederation of Tanzanian Industries. Shabir, if we can start by asking you if you can give us a brief picture of your businesses, how coronavirus has affected you, and what measures you've taken to reduce risks and continue and sustain business operations.
Shazin, thank you very much, and thank you, the Economic Planning Board, for inviting me to be a part of this webinar. Let me first just clarify that these are my own personal views and thoughts, and therefore I'm accountable for them, let's put it this way. COVID-19, what a disaster for the world. Like you said, 2% GDP has already been cut from the world's resources if we look at it from the economy. And as there is more and more lockdowns that are still happening around the world, there is huge impact on the financial standing of countries, of companies, of individuals. And this is not just a viral pandemic, it's actually an economic pandemic, like everybody else is saying. So to try and answer your question, because there is no real one answer to everything, and what we have done in our sector, and I'm primarily talking about the hospitality sector at the moment, because I will address the other sectors as we go along. But the hospitality sector is, as you've seen, Shazin, all the hotels are closed. There are a few hotels that are still operating, trying to be creative in their marketing, to be able to say, come live with us for a month, we will give discounted rates, be away from the family, elders, so that you don't have the, the chance of being able to be infected if there is a problem in the house or whatever. I think these are good things. We all need to stay alive at the moment. We have been closed now for 2 months, exactly 2 months. And we're looking at it and saying, when will we really open, right? What do we need to do to be able to get open? Because now that we have, Tanzania has declared itself to say we are open, that there will not be any quarantine for visitors coming into the country. There will be slight checks and whatever, which is quite mandatory. But we don't have any airlines coming in at the moment. We only have 2 airlines operating, and we are hoping that once the full gamut of what airlines used to come to Tanzania, once they start, we will see some traction within the hotel industry. But keeping a property closed for 2 months is not a joke, because the expense that we have to go through, making sure that each and every room first is cleaned, sanitized, we fumigated. There's a lot of exercise that you have to do, and so you have to have a skeleton staff that is working throughout, making sure maintenance is done, because as and when things are just left, there's always going to be some issues that will relate to that. So it's a tough time for the hospitality industry, and especially if I can touch on the fact that when I talk about hospitality, I also talk about tourism. From what my research shows me, that tourism accounts for roughly 17.5% of the GDP of this country, which is huge. right? I think it's only second only to agriculture, if I'm not mistaken, right? And 17.5% on mainland Tanzania and over 35% in Zanzibar, right? And Zanzibar is totally closed. All the hotels are closed. So imagine the amount of workers who, where did they go? What do we do with them? Our main concern as hoteliers, I think, is our people. We have invested heavily in training our people to do their jobs in the correct manner. And in the first 2 months, we have asked them to go on leave, half pay, right? And starting this month, to be honest, we have no choice but to tell them that they are on leave without pay. And there are some who will say, that's not what we want, and so we will have to now sit down with them and come to an agreement as to how they exit, which is very sad. It's very sad to see. I look at my employees as my own family, and it really hurts to see that these are the people who are relying on us for their bread and butter, not only for themselves, for their families. So if I have 200 employees, really 1,000 people are affected in the whole scenario. And therefore, it grieves me to see this. But it's an unfortunate situation. Hopefully, in the next couple of months, we will start looking at reopening because the flights, once they start in July, and we have been given hope by the airlines that there are flights starting to come in. All the major flights that were coming in will start coming in. And people, once they start traveling, now there is another question there. In the last 2-3 months of Corona, I think we have all learned that working from home is a great option, right? Shazin, it's so difficult when you talk about labor, right? Your employees who are really part of your family at the end of the day, and we treat them as such, and we've invested in them as well. And when you talk about laying off or putting 200 people on leave without pay, that means probably 1,000 people who don't have an income because of their families. And therefore, it really grieves us to see. But what can we do? We really don't have a choice. Yeah. Shazin, we belong to a family of international hotels, the Marriott Group. Marriott has roughly 7,000 hotels, of which right now, as I speak, 83% of those 7,000 hotels have been closed worldwide. It's a huge issue as far as the hotel industry is concerned. Obviously, Marriott has their guidelines. We locally have our guidelines that we have to follow in terms of labor law and making sure that not only labor law is something which is mandatory, right? But beyond that, I think we need to be a bit humane as well. Labor law might not be, might give you certain things, and might not even give you certain things. There are guidelines, and I think one of the issues that we are having just now, and which is being debated very hotly, not only for our industry, for all the industries, what happens COVID-19 related employment issues. If your business is not doing well, if there is no business, yes, you can lay off people, right? But you may not want to lay off people, right? Just like I would not like to lay off my staff because, again, they're well trained, they know my property. I don't have to now redo everything again. There's a cost implication to that as well as a company. So sometimes labor laws will tell you what you're allowed to do, and this is what we follow very strictly, right? All the guidelines that are given under the Tanzania labor laws are followed very, very strictly.
Post-corona, how do you see the hospitality sector? What changes will follow after this pandemic? And in particular, what changes are you going to implement in your hotel? Being part of the Marriott Group, Marriott are taking stringent worldwide hygiene safety protocols, limiting human interaction in check-in and check-out between staff and guests. Complete overhaul of the spas, the gyms, and the F&B industries. How is that going? How are these costs going to affect your business?
I think it's a very valid question, and I smile because, you know, I don't know. I look at the Marriott Group and I say, wow, they have their safety, fire, life safety standards, FLS standards, what we call about, are probably the highest in the world. And you have to follow them to the letter. They have inspectors who will come in and stay in your hotel just as a guest, and you wouldn't even know it.
Mysterious guests.
You're being audited, right? And at the end of the audit, the guy will come up to you and say, I'm Mr. So-and-so, I was auditing your hotel, and this is what I give you as a out of 100 marks, this is what I give you. But over and above that, what they had already instituted, which was very interesting, is a completely, like you said, person-to-person, contactless check-in, check-out system. Today, you can go book in a Marriott hotel online, right? And as you go to the hotel, it will connect to the hotel, and it will give you a guide to where you need to go to your room. You don't have to interact with anyone. So you go, if the lift needs a card, you will use your smartphone, and that will take you up to wherever you want to. You go to your room and you use your smartphone to actually unlock the door. So it is completely contactless, right? This is one of the things that I see will be something very interesting for the future. But when it comes to the F&B industry especially, we really don't know. Right now, even if I was to open one of the restaurants, we would make sure that there is some social distancing happening between tables, and that all the hygiene protocols are followed, that you wash your hands or sanitize your hands, and we make sure that all the tables are sanitized as and when used. All the crockery, cutlery, everything has to be sanitized, has to go through the heat process systems, which we already have, right? Normally you would have as a hotel. So coming to rooms, I mean, does it mean now that we cannot have two rooms side by side? Would that create a problem in terms of social distancing? We don't know yet, right? It's all as we go. This is, this is new for the entire world.
It's a great learning curve. Okay, let me rephrase that. Maybe not a great learning curve, but it is a learning curve.
Look, everything and all the sages have said every day you have to learn something new, right? And so this is another learning, right? And I think it's we just have to be positive about things. So one of the things that I see people doing is becoming very very negative and very how would I say, becoming very negative about the whole issue of COVID-19.
When you go one step backwards, you touched base on the F&B industry. So as we all know, when we go to hotels, our breakfast is normally in a buffet context or format. That will definitely have to change, because from what I've been reading, it's going to be more of a grab and go kind of a breakfast. As you said, we still don't know what the answers are, but a buffet will be a very difficult to maintain the social distancing and What is your opinion on that? And it leads me to my second question. Does that bring in opportunities for people to assist you in doing the catering of the grab and go?
Good question, Shazin. I'll tell two parts to it. One, before we closed down the hotel, we were already practicing that. The buffet was closed, and we used to have an afternoon buffet here every day. That got closed down, so we had a grab and go. Right, you just take something and go. You don't even sit in the restaurant. As far as breakfast is concerned, there are two options. One, you either do a grab and go, take your coffee and bagel or whatever and leave, or you order breakfast in your room, right? Which is a full breakfast. That's whatever you want then would be given to you. But otherwise, we don't see how else you can do it. But let me tell you, the industry in Tanzania is different. When I look at the F&B industry, and I look at since last Monday, everything opening up, and all the restaurants are open. And I must say, I was a visitor to one of them. And I do believe, my personal belief is that COVID is here to stay with us. Just like all the other diseases that we have seen in the world, TB, bilharzia, God knows what else. I mean, these are all diseases that have come and have stayed. And they all kill as well, just like corona is. But corona's percentage of mortality is much less. The fear is obviously because it is highly contagious. That is why the whole this hullabaloo about everything, everybody trying to close down and whatever. You know, a lot of people say post-corona, and I'm saying there is no such thing as post-corona.
But how does a small Ismaili lady making food from home or a small Ismaili restaurant get their visibility, get that marketing tool? What is new ways, especially for a market like Tanzania, what does online presence bring to the table in regard to getting your visibility, getting your face in the market? We do it in a very traditional way that we are come to. How will they be able to survive in an environment like this where social distancing is very important? They generally work out from a very small outlet, even though their turnover can be huge. What is the answer to that?
So as far as the retail sector is concerned, I think there's always been a big question mark, not only here, but worldwide. Amazon today, what was the last, I guess it was 836 billion value, right? For a company that does what, right? You ask yourself, what does it sell? What does it manufacture? Nothing. Look at Uber. Look at Ola. These are car companies or Taxify or whatever you call it. What do they own? Nothing. It's just an app. The only thing that they own an app. They know what you need and they know what the driver needs, right? And he puts you together and makes money out of it.
They're intermediary.
Completely. So why can't we think like that? But when I say think like that, it's not just okay, today I thought about it and I will go about doing it. I think it requires a lot of, I've seen some of our youngsters looking at different ways of creating marketing. And I think they should be encouraged fully well. And we should have, perhaps I should ask the EPB, look at these guys. Let us look at starting, what do you call these, mushrooming companies, right? Incubators, right? Let's start an incubator where we can look at some of these youngsters. And this is today the world is now become a youngster world. Let me tell you, some of us are becoming dinosaurs in the whole thing, and I'm not putting it mildly, because one, we I think are the targets for Corona in a way. And so we, a lot of the oldies would rather kind of sit back and not go out and that kind of thing. So the youngsters, and when I look at a population like here or India, today the population in Tanzania, 68% now of the population of Tanzania is between the age of 14 and 30. So your average population, if it's 68% is there, it's a very, very young population, right? And so if you take the median 14, 30, you're talking about early 20s, everybody being, that is the bulk of it, right? And therefore, I think these are the people that we need to target. We, you know, some of us who are very traditional in the way we do things, right? I run a company, I have my son and say, come join the company and let's create. And I've seen a lot of companies that where some of the youngsters have come in and brought in fresh new ideas and given an injection to the you know, which is fantastic. But I think we also need to look at people who have not had that opportunity, right? Who have the ideas. I think we can put together through EPB a group, just like what we have on TV. What are they called? The 5 panelists who sit and Shark Tank or British version, Dragon's Den, right? Something like Dragon's Den. I think it's necessary we do it.